piece I will just offer is that, I ran into this Muscovite in the middle of the Soviet Union. I said, Leonid, how do we get more people involved with peace between our countries or the environment? And he said, Mark, first it is important that one fall in love. And I really got that again. The world we're in, it's hard to see because of the pain of what our incredible slumber and disconnection is causing so much rape and plunder. And it's accelerating because of our technology and speed. And more and more people are following their hearts. So, Paul Hawken a number of years ago documented the incredible rise in grassroots groups. There's more and more people dedicating their lives to speaking on behalf of this sacred earth, on behalf of the animals, on behalf of threatened people, on behalf of people who have been marginalized. And so we're also going through an extraordinary time. And more people are dedicating all of they're connecting their genius of their mind with their hearts and their guts, and they're learning to speak, and we can't see who we're becoming as well.
There's something about that word sacred. And how am I supposed to do this when you keep crying all over me? It's so hard. There's something about this word sacred because, you've passed over into this other realm where everything is sacred. And so that word is woven into the fabric of you, kind of like breathing is for the rest of us. And what makes something sacred? Well, to someone for whom everything is sacred, it's the most bizarre question. I mean, how could you ask that question? Because how can everything not be sacred? But it points. It points to the fact that we don't consider ourselves as sacred, that we've lost our own connection to our own hearts as sacred. And I think it's because we've lost connection to our hearts at such a degree, and we've had to, in order to handle the desecration of our world of which we are part. And so it's a huge act of courage to be willing to feel, to be willing to open your heart, to witness the loss, to feel the heartbreak. But unless we do, we won't learn how to do balloting. We won't stand in front of the state capitol and say, you're not taking another tree. We won't stand up and fight or dare to put our life on the line. Because the truth is, our lives are on the line. Future generations' lives are on the line right now. They're on the streets because they don't know that they've got a future. We don't know that they've got a future. There was a boy, what was he called? I can't remember, on the Today program saying, we could be the first generation not to die of old age. We shouldn't ever have to have heard a child or a young man say that in our lifetime or any lifetime if we were following the teachings of the indigenous peoples of this world, for whom, whether it's 7 generations or it's all generations, that you live in a way that makes the lives of those that come after you work. You don't steal from the future to line your pockets short term as if the future doesn't exist.
The challenge of our awakening, is that Einstein line is there's 2 ways to look at the universe, as though nothing's a miracle or as though everything is a miracle. We've inherited a paradigm where nothing's a miracle. You can take everything. You can do anything you want with it. And we've inherited a vocabulary that separates us from, we have them. We perceive there's actually a them out there, we're all in the same boat together. We perceive that nature is out there. We're not a part of it. The air we breathe is not a part of us. The food we eat is not the minerals from the earth. And so we're in the middle of, we get to shift paradigms. We get to grow and mature into a paradigm. And so we had to use the language of economics to show the absurdity of dam building. And there's a whole different way of looking. You beautifully articulate shifting from being consumers to being restorers. And I'll venture that it's even more profound than that. It's living in sacred connection with all. It's what Einstein referred to of when we look at everything as a miracle, then every action we take is different because we're conscious of everything we pick up is a part of the universe and a part of me. And we do everything more consciously. And then, as you beautifully invite, instead of our actions and our doing be disconnected, our actions are informed once we're connected to each other and to this earth, then everything we do comes from a different place. And we serve life, we serve the future, we serve ourselves, we serve everything when we're not amputated from what our hearts and our souls know.
So you touched on all of us being in the same boat. And I know that there were so many lessons that you learned from the river. There were so many ways in which the river taught you to perceive yourself, taught you to perceive life, taught you, like through metaphor after metaphor at you, or life experience after life experience, that helped you move through life, understand life in a different way, as if the river really was your teacher, really was teaching you a different way of living, a different way of being, and a different way of perceiving. And you let that river teach you, you let it inform you, you let it clean you out, you know, and it's lost. Like, to me, your heart is like the Grand Canyon. It's cleaned out with grief, this endless grief, but that grief, because you're willing to feel it, plugs you into your love at such a deep level. And with your love, this endless desire to serve, which is your signature. You know, your signature is service and love. So, lessons from the river. What's the biggest one for you, if that isn't a terribly unfair question?
Well, I'm in this moment drawn to share the lesson that, to me, you and Julia Butterfly articulate and embody, that I accidentally learned but never had words for. But the two of you gift the world with an articulation that our joy and our happiness and our love are only limited by our capacity to grieve. And so my going up to the river and wailing and crying and doing it for a long while, thinking I'll never have to do that again. And I was wrong. The grief keeps coming. And yet I know that, again, so our capacity for living the fullness of our being means diving into the depth of the shadows that limit us. So thank you for gifting me and the world that clarity.
And there's a very real teaching from the river that I shared in the Courage to Shine, which was, if you get stuck underwater, which you can in a river, like when the water goes over a rock and then it starts to spin and you can get caught in a washing machine under the water and you're going round and round and round.
Yeah, so there's right behind a rock is a hole. So the current moves downstream, but now the water goes over the rock, and right behind it, the water is making a big eddy. So right behind it is a washing machine effect. And so many people have drowned because they keep trying to go up towards the light in the air, but they're fighting the current. And if you can let yourself drop or push yourself to go deeper, you're spit out instantaneously of the biggest hole. So thank you for that reminder. Yeah.
I just that one was so powerful for me, because it says, if you trust the river of your life, if you trust that you're in that washing machine for a reason, as a gift for you, instead of trying to fight your way out because you think it's wrong, if you trust and you go deeper into that experience, whatever it is, you will be carried out in perfect time. I mean, that's a huge one. I come back to that one again and again.
Well, yeah, thank you for that reminder. So I knew it. I hadn't quite integrated it into my heart's emotions. You know, a corollary is one of the last times I was in the Grand Canyon. Long story, I couldn't actually be rowing a boat, so I had to take a little ducky. So I'm in a little inflatable kayak. And when you're in an inflatable kayak, I mean, your hands are on the water and, you know, you're not very tall. And the waves in the Grand Canyon are very large. And it was remarkable to go through one of these waves. It's like a 15-foot wave. And know that if you disobey all of your instincts and lean away from the huge wave, it'll flip you and turn you like a lampshade. But if you lean into it and put your blade into the wave, you draw yourself into the fiercest part of the wave, you come out dancing down the other side of the wave. So it feels like, again, this time we live in, instead of cursing the terribleness, how do we lean into all of it and just put all of our hearts and our brilliance and genius into it and lean into the biggest waves and see if we can take the currents downstream. So,
and on a river, apart from the Grand Canyon, there are 5 classes. Would you like to explain that?
So again, anyone who does river running, like climbing, uses the same old coding system, but from 1 to 6. So 1, flat, easy, smooth. Class 6, you die. So you don't run a class 6. And people are always pushing the art, so class 5s are getting more and more dangerous. To run a class 5, you have to be really skilled. You have to know your equipment. You have to, most importantly, you have to know how to read all the water. You have to be able to see, to the untrained eye, it's all this capricious chaos. And the more you learn to read that water, you know which rock causes that huge hole that could actually keep you in for a long while, or the shredder rock just underneath the surface. And if you think you see a through line, you've got to watch, because if there's little tiny obstacles that you don't see, they will spin you off into the bigger obstacles. So what makes a good boater is not being obsessed by the obstacles, because then they become magnets, but putting all your attention on the through line, where the current is most likely to take you and you can survive. For me, humanity is now, we don't realize we are collectively in a class 5. We have never, ever been here before. Much of humanity is in denial. Don't look at it. Isn't somebody else going to take care of this? And
much of humanity is staring at the obstacles and only seeing the obstacles.
And those who are looking at the obstacles have good reason to either be terrified and horrified or enraged because they can see it and go, how come nobody's doing something about it? And very few are putting all their attention on where is the through line? So you can't go through without knowing what those obstacles are, but you have to put all your attention on the through line. And if in fact we're now going through the wrapping and somebody on the other side of my boat does something I don't understand, rather than getting grumpy and angry at them going, how did they do that? I've got to trust that they can see something I can't see. So how do I trust my teammates? And the corollary is, if I make a mistake, instead of wasting their time being mad and upset with me, how could I make a mistake? Now we're going backwards. So how do we all still keep our attention on the through line? We are all in the same boat together. There are no thems. We get to do this together. We're going to make mistakes. Hopefully people won't fall out of the boat. And we're at a time of putting all our attention on finding the through line, honoring that our fear and our anger have had a good place, and now we get to mature past those and put the attention on where do we go next.
You know, so many things come up when I listen to you around surrendering and co-creation. You know, how many of us trust life enough to lie back in the river of our lives and let it carry us? How many of us trust that there is an intelligence to the river of our lives that knows what's best for us, including being stuck under the water in the washing machine, having part of us removed as we, you know, as we develop, as we grow, as we deconstruct, as we emerge again? You know, your early lessons on the river of breaking 7 oars in that first year and discovering what it meant to stop fighting the river and start dancing with the river, replacing fighting with the emergence of grace. And it's the emergence of grace in you and being able to dance with and flow with and surrender to that I think is one of the most profound lessons of our time, because what it says to me is the river is us, the grace is inside us, the plan, the intelligence, the logic, the knowing of how to follow the through line, how to find and follow it, how to hold hands with everybody that we're with, how to turn this into a dance rather than a death throw. You know, the knowledge of that is encoded in us, and somehow it's about leaning into it or dissolving into it or softening into it or bowing to it or having enough humility, or stop trying to know from our minds, stop trying to use the old systems to try and manage the emergence of something that has no system yet, because we've only got the old systems, and yet we've got to be brave enough to let go of what we think we know to allow for something that we don't know to emerge, to let the old dams fall down, the dams in our consciousnesses of what we've been told that we are, that we're not, of how we're told we should be, which is crap, of all the different ways we've been repressed and suppressed, and that we've accepted that and we've colluded with it, and it's not true about us, and it enables us to live lives that are colluding with economic systems that kill our world and prevent our children from having a future. It's all an aberration, it's all a lie, but it's a stage that we're going through, and we can't not go through it, but it's not the end game. There's a different end game, and the end game is at the end of a through line that we have to find. And we get to find. I just want to say, because I know I'm running out of time here, I just want to say, if anybody does have a question for Mark, just put it into the Q&A box on the in the Instant Teleseminar, and we'll go over a little bit so that you get a chance to ask him something. And or I would love it if you could share with Mark how it's been hearing his story, or something else that's true for you that resonates with you. So I'll come in a second and see if anybody does have any questions for him. But Mark, I cut you off, love, sorry.
No, let's see if I can find the thread. That both the learning to dance, it really took me a long time to learn to dance on the river. It was easier to fight and struggle. And learning to apply that to cities and politics, it's easier to go, oh, that old curmudgeon, rather than understanding the current does always flow downstream. You know, to me, part of the Pinker book, The Better Angels of Our Nature, he documents beyond a shadow of a doubt this evolutionary journey that we're making. You know, it's like Martin Luther King said, the arc of the moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice. And how we, you know, how violence was 500 years ago, 100 years ago, even 20 years ago, how women were treated 500 years ago, you know, 100 years ago, 20 years, how kids were treated, how animals were treated. There's this incredible trend, because you beautifully said it, in each of our souls knowing. I mean, I've taken the last cookie on the table when no one was looking, and I've shared it. And I had to try, thinking I was getting more by getting the only cookie. And it was much more fun sharing it with 5 people. And our hearts know that. And we do get to trust that, and you beautifully articulate, we're not, everything is an experiment. We're not making mistakes. We're not flawed. We're just trying. Oh, that didn't work. I tried taking the last cookie. It didn't work very well. I've tried blaming other people instead of looking in my own mirror. It didn't work very well. And so we're all getting to learn together, and we get to co-create. And that's, again, one of the gifts you keep giving is this, it's all an experiment. Oh, how did that feel? And our hearts know. And our collective hearts are growing and growing and knowing what path to follow downstream. So thank you.
There's Craig Patterson. Hello, Craig. Craig has said here, maybe talk of your own miracle and healing after breaking your neck on that river trip, which is a story in and of itself. And he's saying that because your recovery and your positive focused attitude is an amazing story in itself, which has really touched him in his life.
Well, thanks, Craig. On one level, to me, it's I just had, as I shared with you, one of the most amazing summer of my life, playing and dancing on the river. And so on one level, I didn't want anything to ever stop me from that. And it was really interesting. It took me a long while to be able to dive into the river again, because once you've broken the neck, it's like it makes one sensitive. And I think life's spirit, we're all so resilient. And I think, maybe more to what Claire said, to me, it's like we are vastly more powerful than we ever want to admit or confess to. Marianne Williamson's line that we far more fear our light than our shadow. Well, on one level, we're addicted to our shadow because it's safer. We don't have to speak up to what we know. It's scarier to pay attention and trust our heart's knowing and give that voice. And it's safer to be small. So we far more fear. You had me again crying last night again as I was just sharing how what the river taught me and what I knew. I sounded crazy. I can still sound crazy. I'm sensitive. People listen to this, they could either get, he is crazy. Sacred? What do you mean? I mean, we live in a modern world. You've got to turn everything into useful commodities or people won't have progress. And all of us, our hearts know so much more. And, you said colluded. Well, part of it's our fear of speaking up. Part of it's our fear of not being understood. And now we are all in the same boat, and we need everyone's eyesight, that reading the water downstream, we need everyone's eyes because we all have different unique antennas and we all see different things. And so to make it through this class 5 is going to take every single one of us, and not holding our voices back, but finding what our deepest soul's knowing and calling it forth and bringing it forth without having to blame anybody else, honoring that other people may not be able to hear us and still trusting what we know and coming forth.
So beautiful hearing you. There's a lot of gratitude coming in, not many questions, just a lot of love for you, Mark. Mark has really struggled in his life, feeling unheard, not understood, as if the things that he's trying to say don't resonate. And a lot of the time he's taken it personally. He's made it about, he's not intelligent enough, or he's not this enough, or he's not that enough. And what I've seen, both in my own life and in his life, but mostly in his, because I'm not yet what I call a third paradigm person, and Mark is. I'm still in the bridging paradigm. I'm still trying to come through my own awakening into everything is sacred. I can still lean towards convenience. Convenience is the death of nature, largely, our convenience culture. Mark can't do convenience, so I'm not there yet. But the thing is, when you let go of the known, but everybody else is hanging on to the known, when you let go of, I'm going to cry now. When you let go of a way of being that makes sense to everybody else that happens to be crazy, and you enter into a realm of beingness that is actually sane, in which you are belonging to this world and inseparable from this world and nourished by this world beyond the food that you put in your mouth, by the relationships with every living thing that is here, then you realize that it and you are sacred and all part of the same thing. And when you're there, how you communicate will not land with people very often, because they're simply resonating at a different level and you're speaking on a different frequency. It's like your radio is tuned to a completely different radio. And so you can be left feeling very alone and like you're crazy. And you can feel completely crazy when you start to inhabit what I call the more sane realm. And that is one of the reasons why our togetherness matters so, so much, because as we all start transitioning, as we all find the courage to wake up to the craziness of how this world actually is and start to see it as crazy, you need to be holding hands with other people that see that too, or you will start to feel mad and it will stop you. And the momentum of it is so strong, it'll want to suck you back into slumber. It'll want to suck you back into, no, this is normal, you know, buy more, have more, you need more to fill the hole. No, that hole is the absence of our sacred connection with life. And when we're severed from it, yes, we need to pour more and more stuff into it to try and not feel it, or you feel it. You have the courage to feel the absence. And then in that absence, you start to be able to hold space for the more that wants to pour in. And the more that wants to pour in is a natural world that is longing for us to wake up to the absolute miracle that it is. I'm just going to see if there are actually some questions here.
You know, Brian Swim a number of years ago noted, he said, you know, we humans know how to mourn the life of a family member or a pet or a dear friend. We haven't yet matured the human heart enough to mourn the loss of a species. And to me, he hints at this direction you were just talking about, Claire, that we're in the middle of humanity awakening, humanity growing. And, you know, Charles Eisenstein, when he wrote his book, The Better Worlds Our Hearts Know Is Possible, it's been really sweet to watch him masterfully tease out of everyone in the room things that each person would never talk about because it's not part of the norm. And yet he somehow made it safe to be able to have everyone share their experience that's in different realms. And so to me, this we get to have the courage, we get to grow the courage to speak what we know and not take it personal if others don't get it. You know, Joanna Macy shares the story of the Buddhist legend of the Shambhala warriors, that there will be a time on earth when machines of mass destruction are raping and plundering people in the earth, and it will be a very grave time, and the Shambhala warriors will arise. And it's worth looking up the real story here, but she says that they will not have uniforms, but they will recognize each other by looking in each other's eyes. And just thinking of, you know, the privilege of being with you in the UK recently, and the amount of eyes we got to look into of people who are awakening. It's like we're all awakening, and we just get to remind each other, and we get to share hugs, and we get to share courage, and it's an inside job. We get to look in the mirror at where I limit myself, and then we get to also start, as you beautifully just said, find each other, support each other, and help each other make sure we're giving our voice, because now it's needed for all life on this planet.
Oh, it is. There's a lot of more gratitude coming in. Susie from Crockford, you know Susie. How can we share the knowing of the sacred with those who cannot feel it or see it? It's a beautifully impossible question, but I'm really curious what you say, and then I'll also see if I can find words.
You know, one thing I realized long, long ago is that we teach far more by who we are than what we say. So, Susie, you're someone who lives life as sacred. And so people get exposed to that even when you're not talking. And fortunately, the world has you gifting people with the wisdom of your connection with this sacred earth. And that whole piece of, again, how do I live in less fear? How do I speak my heart's knowing? And say it not in an old dogmatic fundamentalist way. You've got to know the earth. You've got to do it my way, but in an invitational way. Because what seduced me was a river that was just there. Its beauty just overflowed. It didn't take somebody saying, you should fall in love with this place, save it. It was the slow awakening of even a gangly, awkward, unaware young man who stumbled into a canyon. So how do we share it as an invitation to the miracle that it is? And I'd look forward to hearing your.
Well, no, I think you've said it. You've said it perfectly. That's what's unique about you. You embody it. Your whole way of being shouts sacred in complete silence. Like it's loud. It's loud. Your love is loud. Everybody feels it when you walk into a room because you've had the willingness to fully experience the sacredness of everything and lose so much of it. And it's broken you enough to have this other expression of you come through. And so they can't not feel the sacred in you because you are feeling it. And I think that's the only way we can do it. You can't wake up faster than you can wake up, but you can smell a beautiful fragrance if there's a beautiful fragrance there. And if that is a person whose heart is wide open, then you can feel the fragrance of that person and it will touch you. It will touch you. So Mark, thank you so much. I want to end with some of your words. I'm going to read them because I know you won't be able to at this point. You'll sit and cry because they come from the deepest part of your heart. But I'm going to leave you all with these living the river's gifts. And I'm going to try, and I probably won't manage either, but can I return imbued with the river's gifts? Can I keep the twinkling clarity of the stars in my eyes? Can the depth and power of the ever-flowing river course through my being? Can the majesty of these never-ending peaks remind me to stand tall? Like the fresh scent of the morning, afternoon, and evening breeze, can I bring freshness to each moment? Can I continue to face the wind, feel my spirit soar, and let blow to the four directions that which no longer serves life? Like the ephemeral storms, thunder, lightning, rain, can I discharge, clearing the path for freshness and clarity? Like the great diversity of birds, plants, animals, insects, fish that occupy such unique, critical, diverse niches, can I completely embrace the great diversity of all humanity, each human expression now, and love what is? Can the songs of the river, in all octaves, birdsong, crickets, insects, the gentle breeze, the wind, can all these sounds flow through me? Can I give it voice and speak for the miracle in ways reminding one and all the depth and beauty of who we really are? Thank you, sweetheart, for who you are and how you love and what you teach us all. And may we all find the through line. May we have the courage to let our hearts break open, bear witness to everything that we're losing, so that we can choose to step forward in ways that refuse this future that we're heading towards and create a new one powerfully and positively and joyfully and collaboratively right now, finding as we do the very best of ourselves, the truest expressions of ourselves. Thank you, Mark.
as we open our hearts to that full spectrum, can we fall so in love with this sacred miracle that we're in the middle of, that our little fearful egoic stuff can fade away and we can just give voice to this miracle in life that we're all a part of, and be a beaming being of answering Susie's question of what else is there to do? We get to do it. We get to show up at this sacred time in our collective evolutionary journey. And so let's have fun doing it, because if we forget that, we forget everything. So what a joy to share this sacred life with you and this great turning with you.
Thank you, sweetheart. Thank you, everyone.
So much love.